Living under the absurdly strict rules of the Oakbrook Ridge HOA meant that I wasn't allowed to have friends over past 8 p.m., even while the board members threw their own parties well past midnight without consequence. But what none of them knew was that my father, Alex Carmichael, a respected construction executive who oversaw nearly every major development in the area, had just about had enough. And when he decided to take action, the board had no idea what kind of lesson they were in for. It started on an otherwise quiet Thursday night. My best friend, Chris, and I were in the middle of a heated video game match, trash-talking like we were teenagers again. I glanced at the time, 8:15 p.m. when the doorbell rang. Weird. Who would show up this late? When I opened the door, there stood Mrs. Victoria Lang, arms crossed, lips pressed so tightly they looked like a paper cut. Flanking her were two familiar faces, Harold Denton and Evelyn Marsh, fellow board members of the HOA. They looked like bodyguards escorting a president. Your guests need to leave. Immediately, Victoria announced, pointing at Chris's car and the others in my driveway. Her tone was sharp enough to slice through the humid summer air. I blinked. Excuse me. She didn't even flinch. We've implemented a new rule: no visitors after 8 p.m. In Oakbrook Ridge. Harold adjusted his glasses and added, it was passed during last week's board meeting. Properly voted on and documented. Chris came to the door behind me, a puzzled look on his face. Everything cool? I sighed. Apparently, we're violating some new rule about visitors after 8. Victoria tapped her watch. It's now 8:17. Either they leave or this will be recorded as a formal violation. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I never received any notice about a new rule. All homeowners were emailed, Evelyn said, although she couldn't quite meet my eyes. As my friends gathered their things to leave, I happened to glance down the street and saw something that made my blood boil. 3 houses over, board member Lisa Trent's house looked like a rave was going on. At least 8 cars were parked out front, music thumping and lights blazing through every window. What about Lisa's get-together? I said, pointing. Seems like plenty of visitors there after 8. Victoria didn't even turn her head. Board members are exempt when conducting community business. Book club is community business? I asked, unable to hide the sarcasm. Don't make this difficult, Harold said, his voice low. First violation is a warning. Second is a $100 fine. Third is $250. Beyond that, we can place a lien on your home. After my friends left, I sat on the couch fuming. This wasn't the first time they'd sprung ridiculous rules on us. Last month, they banned basketball hoops in driveways. Before that, garden gnomes taller than a foot were outlawed. And every time, somehow, board members were magically exempt. The next morning, I called my dad. He wasn't just my father, was the regional director of Carmichael Builders, the most powerful construction company in 3 counties. His voice came through the phone, slow and deliberate. They kicked your friends out at 8:15? Yeah. And they party as late as they want. There was a pause. This doesn't sound right. I'm coming by tomorrow. We'll look at your HOA documents together. You don't have to. I want to. Plus, I've been meaning to check on that community center bid. When Dad arrived the next day, he had a thick folder of plans and HOA documentation he'd requested as a contractor. He sat at my kitchen table for hours, flipping through the bylaws, occasionally scribbling notes or muttering to himself. Here's your problem, he said, pointing to a paragraph. New rules that affect property use require a 30-day written notice and a 2/3 majority vote, not just a board vote. I never got a written notice, I told him. Just that random email. Then they're not following procedure. And that's just the start. He laid out blueprints for the proposed community center renovation, a $1.2 million project that would raise everyone's dues by 30%. His firm was the top candidate for the job. He showed me the records of past project applications. Victoria's backyard reno got approved in 2 days, he said. Meanwhile, your neighbor Mark has been waiting 3 months to build a similar deck. Can they even do that? Not legally. And not ethically. He smiled faintly. Sometimes people need a little education. The hard kind. That evening, Victoria returned. This time, she found me at the door with my college roommate, Jordan, who just arrived for the weekend. I thought I made myself clear, she snapped, glaring at Jordan's duffel bag. No visitors after 8. Before I could answer, Dad stepped into view behind me. Good evening, Miss Lang. I'm Alex Carmichael. Carmichael Builders. Her entire demeanor changed. Mr. Carmichael. What a surprise. Just helping my son understand his rights as a homeowner, including the rule that changes require 30 days notice and a community-wide vote. Well, there are emergency provisions for safety concerns, she said weakly. Yes, Dad nodded. Is Jordan here a safety concern? The board deemed. I'd love to see the meeting minutes where that was decided. And the vote count? Victoria looked like a fish gasping for air. I'll consult the board. Great idea, Dad said. While you're at it, check the approval process for community projects. I've noticed some irregularities that the State Housing Authority might be interested in. When she left, Jordan turned to me. Dude, your dad is terrifying in a good way. 3 days passed with no visits from the HOA goon squad. My friends came over freely. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Just a calm before the storm. That evening, I got a text from my neighbor, Lily, emergency board meeting at Victoria's tonight. Lots of angry faces going in. I called Dad. Perfect timing, he said. Community center bid deadlines tomorrow. I've been making calls. What kind of calls? Let's just say I've been chatting with every contractor, plumber, and landscaper in Oakbrook Ridge. We all feel the same about selective enforcement. The next evening was the monthly HOA meeting. Normally these were empty affairs, but tonight the community center was packed. Victoria stood at the front, looking rattled. Regarding the visitor curfew policy, she said, her voice tight, the board has decided to table this rule pending further input. A quiet wave of murmurs swept through the room. She moved on. We expected to announce the contractor for the community center renovation, but Harold stood, looking grim. All 3 companies we considered have withdrawn. In fact, every contractor in the county has declined to bid. The room exploded in whispers. We reached out, Evelyn said, but they all cited scheduling conflicts, or just chose not to engage. Dr. Ellison, who lived in one of the larger homes, raised his hand. I spoke with Alex Carmichael yesterday. He shared concerns about how this HOA is being run. Victoria's face flushed. Mr. Carmichael has no authority. He's a homeowner's parent. He has a voice. And what he shared about favoritism, fast-tracked approvals, unjust fines, it's serious. One by one, residents began sharing their experiences. Rosa had waited 6 months to get her front door approved. Harold's brother-in-law lived rent-free in his guest house for over a year, while my other neighbor Mike had been fined for letting his mom visit for 2 weeks. I watched Victoria furiously typing on her phone. Minutes later, she marched up to me. This is your father's doing. I raised an eyebrow. Contractors make their own decisions. So do homeowners. We need to speak to him. Immediately. He's busy. Booked solid for 6 months in neighborhoods that follow their own rules. You're playing a dangerous game. No. I'm asking for fairness. The old air conditioning unit in the center gave a wheeze and died. Sweat trickled down my back. Perfect timing, Lily whispered beside me. I got a text from Dad. How's it going? Better than expected, I replied. The board's melting down. Literally and figuratively. 3 days later, at 7:15 a.m., a knock at my door jolted me awake. Victoria and Harold were there, accompanied by a man in a suit. This is Randall Price, our attorney, Victoria announced. Mr. Price stepped forward. We believe your father is orchestrating a boycott. That's tortious interference. I crossed my arms. Contractors declining bids isn't illegal. And my dad never signed anything. We're willing to make a deal, she said through gritted teeth. We'll cancel the curfew rule if he resumes business. That's not enough. What about the other residents you've mistreated? You're in no position to make demands, Harold snapped. I pulled out my phone. My dad suggested I record everything from now on. Go ahead, counselor, repeat your threat. Price turned pale. Victoria pulled out a paper. This is our offer. I scanned it. Minor changes. Nothing meaningful. I held up my phone and read from Dad's email instead. All board members resign. New elections with independent oversight. Full audit of HOA finances from the past 3 years. Absolutely not, Victoria screamed. Then let's see how long Oakbrook Ridge can function without contractors. Summer's coming. Pool's already closed. That night, Lily hosted a community meeting in her backyard. Nearly 60 people showed up. One of them was Mr. Grayson, a retired attorney. You have the right to force a new election with 25% of signatures, and the right to demand financial transparency. As neighbors passed around the petition, I got a message from Evelyn Marsh. We need to talk. Privately. I stepped away and called her. Victoria doesn't know I'm contacting you. This has gone too far. Her husband owns the company that handles all HOA maintenance seat inflated prices. My jaw dropped. I have records, bank statements, misused funds. Would you share that at a meeting? I will, but I need assurances. An hour later, she stood in front of Lily's projector screen, revealing it all: phony repairs, shady contracts, misused HOA reserves. The crowd gasped. Then the shouting began. Just then, a black SUV pulled up. Victoria charged into the yard like a storm cloud. What is this? It's over, Evelyn said. We've shared everything. You. Victoria pointed at me. You and your father ruined everything. No, you did. When you forgot what fairness means. Grayson handed her the petition. Over 50% of residents demand your resignation. At that moment, Dad stepped out of the shadows. Calm, steady, unshakable. The county commissioner's interested in new HOA oversight regulations, he said. Might even name them after you, the Lang laws. Victoria didn't say another word. 3 weeks later, I sat in the newly renovated, fully air-conditioned community center. The election results were in Lily Dr. Ellison and 3 other reform-minded residents had won board seats. Their first move? Forming a community oversight committee. You handled this well, Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. You stood up not just for yourself, but for everyone. I had a good teacher. That night, with no curfew in place, I invited Chris and Jordan over for a marathon game night. We played and laughed long past 8 p.m. And it felt like the whole community finally exhaled.